66 of your math journal. We're going to call this one comparing decimals, fractions, and percents. And for space, I'm just going to write a percent symbol. Alright, I want you to put big stars here. When comparing numbers, then in all caps, put them in the same form. Okay, when comparing numbers, you need to put them in the same form. So if you're comparing decimals, fractions, and percents, and they're all in their different forms, to accurately compare them, put them into the same form. And to me, it's easiest to put them into decimal form. However, you can put them in, all of them in the same form. As long as they're in the same form, then you can accurately make decisions. Okay, so I'm going to say, to me, it is easiest to compare when they're all in decimal form. So when all numbers are in their decimal form. So let's do an example. We're going to compare each set. Using greater than, less than, or equals. So if I have 0.68 and I'm comparing that to 69%, how do I know which one is bigger? Well, some of you might be able to convert this in your head, and I hope by now you are, but if you're not, turn them into the same form. So here, if I want to turn it into its decimal form, I'd just move the decimal 1 2 times. This would be the same as 0.69. Okay, look at the place values. 68, 69, that would mean that 69% is larger than 0.68. This would be the same as 68%. Okay, let's say you have 1.2 and you have 5/3. How do those compare to each other? To me, it's easiest to put them into decimal form. Well, here, 5/3, I can just do my division. So I'm going to put 5 in the box because it's the numerator. 3 is my divisor. 3 goes into 5 one time. Minus 3 leaves me with 2. And x is 0 and a decimal. 3 goes into 20 6 times. Minus 18 leaves me with 2 and x another 0. I get 20 again. I'm going to get another 6, and it's going to keep going on just like that. So I'm noticing that this is repeating. So this is the same as 1.6 repeating. So what is larger, 1.2 or 1.6 with repeating? Well, 1.6 is definitely larger than 1.2. Okay, sometimes you're going to be asked to organize them from least to greatest. And if that's the case, once again, I would turn them all into their decimal form, but you can turn them all into fractions or all into percents. as long as they're all in the same format before you start comparing. So we're going to order these from greatest to least. Okay, we have 2.3%. We're going to have 0.23. 2 1/3. 230%. 0.23%. And we want to put these in order from least to, from greatest to least. So here we want to picking the biggest one to list first. Okay, I'm going to take the ones that are not already in their decimal form and I'm going to change them. So this one's already in its decimal form, so I'm just going to write it right here. This one here is not in its decimal form, so I'm going to move the decimal. Remember, the percent seems bigger than its decimal form. So I'm going to move it back 2 places. So this would be 0.023. This here would be 2 whole units, so 2 point, and then 1/3, I'm going to turn that into a decimal by doing 1 divided by 3. So down here I'm just using this for scratch space. 1 divided by 3, 3 goes into 1 0 times. Minus 0 leaves me with 1. Decimal, annex 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. Minus 9 leaves me with 1, annex another 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. Minus 9, notice it's repeating again. So this would be 3 with a line over it. 230%, if I want to write that as a decimal, then I'm going to have 2.3, because my decimal's here, I just moved back 2 times. So 200, 2 wholes, right? And 30% more, 2.3. And this one has a decimal in it, but it's in its percent form because of the percent sign. So I'm going to move the decimal back 2 places, so 0.0023. Okay, some of you from here would be able to figure it out. Others might be struggling with wondering which one was better. This is where lining up the decimals can be useful. So over here, I'm just going to rewrite those numbers again in their decimal form. So this one is 0.023. This one is 0.23. 2.3 with a line over it, so that would mean this would be 3, 3, and it would keep going that. And then I fill in anything else so that I have every place value accounted for. 2.3, so here would be 0, 0, and then I have 0.0023. Oh, I'm just going to add it. Put a 0 here. Now this one, remember, it was 3 repeating, so I've got to put another 3 there. This one terminated, so it has a 0, and this one terminated, so it has a 0. Okay, if I'm going greatest to least, look at this first place value. 2 is definitely bigger than 0. Which of these is bigger? Well, look at the next place value. These 3's are the same. Here we have 3, and here we have 0. This one is smaller than this one, so the largest one would have to be, now this is where we want to put it in their original form. So remember, this is here, and that was the same as 2 1/3. So greatest to least, my first answer would be 2 1/3. Okay, I'm just going to put a check mark there. So remember, I've used that one already. Well, next would have to be this one. In its original form, it was 230%. So I've used that one. Now I'm looking at these ones. These all had zeros in the ones places, so I'm going to look at the tenths. 0, 2, remember we've already used these ones, 0. So 2 is bigger than zeros. So that would mean that this one in its original form was 0.23. Okay, so I've used this one up. No, this one. So now I'm looking at these ones. Okay, 0, 2 is larger than 0 here. So that means that 0. Oh, what was its original form? This was 2.3%. So I'm going to need to write that in its original form. So 2.3%. And the last one we had was this one, which was 0.23%. Okay, so greatest to least would be just like this. Okay, now we're going to do a real world example, meaning a story problem. So I'm going to write a little story here. Okay, John got 17 out of 25 correct on his test. Jed got a 78% on his test. Who scored the highest? Okay, so we have John and Jed, and we're trying to figure out whose score is highest here. So just looking at this and this, some of you might be able to figure it out, but most of us don't see it right away. So I either need to turn this into a percent or this into a fraction. Whichever way works for you, it doesn't matter, but to me, it's easiest to go to the decimal form. So I'm actually going to turn both of them into decimal form for me to compare. Well, John has 17 out of 25. And the reason I say it's easier to go to decimal form is they're easier to compare. Fractions, if you reduce them to their simplest fraction form, sometimes you have different denominators and then you have to get a common denominator. But if you just go to decimals, it's super easy to compare because they don't have different simplification. So I'm going to just turn both of these into decimals. So he had 78%. Sorry, forgive me on that one. So as a decimal, this one would be, I'm just going to move my decimal back 2 places, which is why I like to use decimals when dealing with percents. So he would be 0.78. John, I need to do 17 divided by 25. Or some of you might see that I could turn that into something over 100, and that would work as well. 25 does not go into 17, so I'm going to write 0, annex a decimal, and a 0. 25 will go into 170 6 times. So minus 150, that leaves me with 20. Annex another 0, bring it down. 25 goes into 208 times. Minus 200 leaves me with 0. Okay, so this in its decimal form would be 0.68. Or if I wanted to make it into its percent form, it would be 68%. So either way, I can look at the decimals or I can make this one all the way to a percent and compare. 68% is smaller than 78%. Or looking at these, this is smaller than this one. So Jed scored highest. That's how you compare fractions, decimals, and percents. Make sure that they go into the same form before you start comparing.